Her stepmother cast her aside, until the Alpha King took her hand at the festival. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's get back to the story. The Moon Festival was in full swing, with the night sky glowing under the light of a full moon, casting an ethereal glow over the town square. The air was filled with the sounds of laughter, music, and the soft clinking of glasses as wolves from every pack in the region gathered to celebrate the most anticipated event of the year. Among the sea of alphas and betas, Lina stood quietly in the background, unnoticed and ignored. She wore a plain dress, one that had been handed down from her stepsister, a dress that was too small, too old, and too faded to fit in with the opulent outfits of the other women in attendance. Her stepsister Seraphine stood at the front of the crowd, radiant in her gown, surrounded by a group of betas and alphas, the very picture of perfection. Lina could feel the sting of rejection, but she stood there, shoulders hunched, her hands gripping the edge of the serving tray she was holding. She knew her place in the pack. She was nothing more than a servant, meant to blend into the background, her existence barely noticed by those around her. Her stepmother, Isolde, had made it clear that she was of no importance, constantly reminding her that she was lucky to even be included in such events. "Don't embarrass us, Lina," her stepmother had warned her before they arrived. "Stay in the shadows and keep quiet." So she did. She kept her head down, serving drinks, moving silently through the crowd, ensuring no one noticed how out of place she felt. As the night wore on, the excitement built. The Alpha King, Victor Ravenswood, was due to make his appearance. His arrival had everyone on edge, whispers spreading like wildfire through the crowd. The rumors about the Alpha King were many. He was said to be ruthless, powerful, and impossible to win over. But tonight, he was here for a reason that was not yet clear. Lina had heard the whispers among the pack members. The Alpha King was rumored to be choosing a mate. But that wasn't for someone like her. That was for someone like Seraphine, the beta, the one who was everything Lina was not. The very thought of being chosen by such a powerful man was laughable. But Lina couldn't help but glance toward the entrance, her curiosity piqued. And then the crowd parted as the Alpha King entered the square. Victor Ravenswood was every bit the legend they spoke of. Tall, with broad shoulders and a commanding presence, his black attire making him stand out against the bright lights of the festival. His icy blue eyes scanned the crowd, and for a moment, Lina felt as though the entire world had stopped. His gaze landed on her. It was brief but enough to make her heart race. She quickly looked away, unsure of what she had just felt. But deep down something had shifted. The Alpha King wasn't supposed to be looking at someone like her. He was supposed to be focused on the others, the beautiful, the strong. But in that moment it was as though the entire world had faded away, leaving only the two of them standing there. For the briefest second, Victor's expression softened, just enough for Lina to feel that there was something more to him than the rumors let on. Victor continued to survey the crowd, and Lina was left standing in the shadows, her heart racing. She quickly shook off the feeling and returned to her task, but deep inside, something had been awakened, a feeling she couldn't explain. The night continued, but for Lina, it was as though time had slowed, her mind racing with questions she had no answers to. What did that look mean? Why had he looked at her? She couldn't shake the thought. And little did she know this festival, this night would change her life forever. It wasn't just the Alpha King who noticed her. It was fate itself, and nothing would be the same after tonight. Stay tuned because the story is just beginning. As the music played and the laughter of the other wolves filled the air, Lina felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Her mind was racing. After the brief but electric encounter with Victor Ravenswood, the Alpha King, he had looked at her, and in that instant everything had changed. But she couldn't allow herself to believe it. It had to have been a mistake or worse, a passing glance. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that something about the way he had looked at her was different from the others. He hadn't dismissed her like everyone else. He hadn't ignored her. And that alone felt like a miracle. As the festival continued, Lina tried to focus on her duties, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Victor. She felt like an outsider in the sea of vibrant, confident wolves around her. She wasn't important. She wasn't worthy. That's what she had been told her whole life. Her stepmother, Isolde, had always made sure to remind her of that. You're lucky to be here, Lina. Don't forget your place. Those words echoed in her head, just as they had for years. But something inside her was starting to break free. It wasn't just a passing feeling, it was hope. The hope that maybe, just maybe, she was worth more than the world had led her to believe. The night wore on, and Lina found herself retreating into the shadows once more, trying to stay out of sight. But then she saw him again. Victor. This time he wasn't just standing there observing the crowd. He was walking toward her. Her heart skipped a beat as he drew nearer, and for a moment the entire world seemed to fall away. The chatter of the other wolves faded into the background, and all she could hear was the sound of her own breath. As he approached, Victor gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod. His eyes locked onto hers. The world seemed to freeze in that moment, and Lina felt a rush of warmth flood through her chest. He was standing right in front of her now, his presence overwhelming, his towering figure casting a shadow over her. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. All she could do was stare up at him, completely captivated by his presence. Then, in a voice that was quiet but firm, Victor spoke. I've been watching you. His words were simple, but they hit her like a thunderclap. What? Lina managed to whisper, her voice trembling slightly. He smiled, a knowing glint in his eyes. I saw you earlier in the crowd. You were standing there unnoticed. But I saw you. You're not like the others. Lina felt her heart race. This couldn't be real. Why was he speaking to her like this? She had never been anything special. She had always been the invisible one. But here he was, the Alpha King, speaking to her like she mattered. She didn't know how to respond. I don't understand, she stammered, her mind a blur. Victor took a step closer, his presence more imposing than ever. You don't need to understand just yet. But I know you're different. And I want to get to know you better. The words sent a shiver down Lina's spine. This was impossible. Was he serious? Why her? But the way he was looking at her, the way his gaze softened when he spoke, told her that he wasn't playing some cruel joke. He meant it. Before she could respond, a voice interrupted them. It was her stepmother, Isolde, striding across the room with a forced smile plastered on her face. Your Highness, she said, bowing her head slightly. I hope the evening finds you well. Victor turned his attention to Isolde, his eyes narrowing slightly. I'm fine, thank you, he replied coldly. His gaze quickly shifted back to Lina, who was still standing there in shock. Don't go anywhere, he said to her, his voice low and commanding. And then, without another word, he turned and walked away, leaving Lina standing there, her heart racing in her chest. She couldn't believe it. The Alpha King had just spoken to her. And not only that, he had made it clear that he wanted to speak to her again. For the first time in her life, Lina felt like she wasn't invisible. She felt seen. As the night wore on, Lina couldn't shake the feeling that her life had just changed forever. She wasn't sure how it would play out, but she knew one thing for certain. The path ahead was no longer as lonely as it had been before. The Alpha King had taken notice of her, and that was a change that would alter everything. What would happen next? She didn't know, but she couldn't wait to find out. After the encounter with Victor Ravenswood, the Alpha King, Lina couldn't think straight. The whole night felt like a blur as she continued her duties at the festival, her hands shaking, her thoughts consumed by the way he had looked at her. She kept replaying his words in her mind. I've been watching you. How could it be? How could someone like him, the Alpha King, pay attention to her? A mere Omega who had always been ignored by everyone around her. But there it was, his gaze had lingered, and his words had been clear. She wasn't sure what to think, but deep down, she couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Was it possible that she was more than what everyone had always told her she was? Could Victor really see something in her? The night dragged on, and eventually the festival began to wind down. The crowds thinned as the Alpha King left the main area, escorted by his guards. The music grew quieter, the energy of the night fading. Lina tried to focus on the last few tasks her stepmother had assigned her, but her mind kept wandering back to Victor. She had never felt this way before. It was as though something inside her had been awakened, A new feeling that she couldn't quite name but couldn't ignore. She had spent her entire life believing she was unimportant, that no one would ever care about her, and that she was destined to live in the shadows. But now, with Victor's attention, something had shifted. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she felt as though she might have a place in it. As she was finishing up her work, she heard footsteps behind her, and before she could turn around, a voice spoke. Lina may I have a word with you? The voice was smooth, commanding, yet gentle, and she knew immediately who it was. She turned to find Victor Ravenswood standing there, his tall frame casting a long shadow in the dim light. His piercing blue eyes were fixed on her, his expression unreadable, but there was something in the way he stood that made her heart race. "Your Highness," she said, her voice trembling slightly. She didn't know how to act around him. Was she supposed to bow? Or stand as she always had, trying to remain invisible? But Victor didn't give her a chance to second-guess herself. He stepped closer, the intensity of his gaze making it hard for her to breathe. "I told you earlier that I've been watching you," he said softly. "I meant it. There's something about you, Lina, something different." She swallowed hard, unsure of how to respond. Was he teasing her? She had always been overlooked, never considered for anything important. She had never been special. "I don't understand," she whispered, her eyes downcast. "Why me?" Victor didn't answer right away. Instead, he seemed to be studying her, his gaze softening. "Because you're not like the others. You're strong even though you don't see it. And there's a kindness in you that's rare, especially in a world like this," he said, his voice steady and filled with a warmth that made Lina's heart skip. She couldn't believe it. How could he see that in her? She had always been told she was weak, that she was nothing more than a burden. "I don't know what to say," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to say anything," Victor said, his hand reaching out and gently tilting her chin up so that their eyes met once more. "I just wanted you to know that I see you, Lina. And I'm not like the others. I don't expect you to be someone you're not. I just want to know you." His words sent a wave of emotion through her, and for the first time in her life, she felt truly seen. It was overwhelming. She didn't know what this meant, or where it would lead, but she knew one thing. Her life had changed in that moment. She began, but before she could finish, Victor stepped back slightly. "I have to go," he said, his voice soft but firm. "But I'll be seeing you again, Lina. I promise you that." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Lina standing there, her heart racing, her mind swirling. What had just happened? Was it real? She had no answers, but one thing was certain. She could no longer deny the spark that had ignited between them. She didn't know where it would go, but she was willing to find out. And as the festival came to an end, and the crowds began to disperse, Lina felt a strange sense of excitement and fear in her chest. She had been seen by the most powerful wolf in the kingdom. And somehow, she knew that this was only the beginning. The next few days after the festival passed in a blur for Lina. Every time she closed her eyes, she could still feel the intensity of Victor Ravenswood's gaze, his words echoing in her mind. "I see you, Lina. You're not like the others." She had never thought of herself as special, but now those words lingered with her, like a soft but unshakable whisper in the back of her mind. The life she had always known seemed so distant now, as if it belonged to someone else. She found herself doing things differently, standing a little taller, taking a little more time with her tasks, even though she still worked in the shadows of the grand halls. Her stepmother, Isolde, continued to treat her as little more than a servant, never acknowledging the shift that had begun inside Lina. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that Victor had seen her, and the possibilities that had seemed impossible just days before now seemed within reach. One afternoon, as she was working in the kitchen, preparing food for the upcoming feast in honor of Alpha King Victor's return to the capital, a messenger arrived with a letter sealed with the royal insignia. It was addressed to Lina. Her heart raced as she carefully broke the seal, unfolding the letter. The words were brief, but they sent a rush of excitement through her. "You are invited to dine with Alpha King Victor Ravenswood tomorrow evening. Your presence is requested. Come to the royal hall by sundown." It took Lina a moment to process what she had just read. She had been invited by Victor himself, not as a servant but as a guest. Her mind raced with questions. Was this a test? Was he really interested in her? Or was this some kind of cruel joke? But the words on the page were clear. She was invited. She had no choice but to go. The next evening, she dressed in the best outfit she had. A simple but elegant gown that had once belonged to her mother. It wasn't much compared to the lavish gowns worn by the women of the court, but it was the best she had. She carefully braided her hair, making sure to pull it away from her face, and applied a little bit of makeup to hide the weariness she had been feeling. As she made her way to the royal hall, her heart pounded in her chest. What if she wasn't worthy? What if he had only invited her out of pity? But no, Victor's words echoed in her mind again. You're not like the others. She had to believe that. When she arrived at the royal hall, she was greeted by the guards who led her inside. The room was grander than she had ever seen before, with marble floors and towering pillars. The scent of fine food filled the air, and the sound of music played softly in the background. But in the midst of all the luxury, it was Victor who stood out. He was seated at the head of the table, his commanding presence impossible to ignore. His blue eyes locked onto hers as she entered, and for a moment, it felt as though the entire room fell away, leaving only the two of them. He stood as she approached, his gaze never leaving hers. Lina he said, his voice deep and smooth. I'm glad you could make it. She curtsied awkwardly, unsure of what to say. Your Highness, thank you for the invitation, she replied, her voice trembling slightly. Victor gestured to the empty chair beside him. Please sit. I've been wanting to talk to you. There's much we need to discuss. Lina sat down, her heart racing in her chest. She couldn't believe this was happening. They were sitting across from each other, the grand feast set before them, but it felt as though the whole world had narrowed to just the two of them. The conversation began casually, with Victor asking about her life, her upbringing, and her thoughts on the world around her. Lina found herself speaking more freely than she ever had before. Something about Victor's presence made her feel safe, as though she could be herself, even though she had never allowed herself that luxury before. As the evening wore on, the tension between them grew. Victor seemed to hang on every word she said, his interest genuine. He smiled at her in a way that made her heart flutter. She hadn't realized how much she had been starved for kindness until now. The dinner eventually came to an end, and as the last of the plates were cleared away, Victor stood up. I have a request, he said, his voice lowering. Would you walk with me in the garden? There is something I wish to show you. Lina nodded, unsure of what to expect but too curious to refuse. As they walked through the grand halls and into the royal gardens, Victor continued to speak with her, asking her about her dreams, her desires, and what she wanted out of life. She had never had someone listen to her so intently, and she found herself opening up in ways she hadn't before. Finally, they reached a secluded spot in the garden, a small clearing surrounded by trees. Victor stopped and turned to face her. Lina he began, his voice full of conviction. I know you have doubts about what I've said to you, but I want you to know this. You are not like the others. You are different. And I want you by my side in whatever capacity that may be. I want to know you, Lina. Her heart skipped a beat at his words. She had never dared to dream that someone like him, the Alpha King, would ever want her. But in that moment, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she could have everything she had ever wanted. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, she felt like she had a place in it. The days that followed Victor's invitation to dinner were filled with anticipation and uncertainty for Lina. Each time she thought about their conversation, about how he had looked at her with such genuine interest, her heart fluttered in her chest. But there was still a part of her that couldn't quite believe it. Could Victor Ravenswood, the Alpha King, really want someone like her? She had spent so long in the shadows, so long believing that she would never be seen, that it was hard to accept that someone like him could actually care about her. Yet every time she caught his gaze or heard his voice, it was clear that he did. He was serious. As the days turned into weeks, Lina found herself meeting with Victor more and more, under the guise of her duties, of course. He would occasionally summon her to his chambers for discussions, or ask her to join him for a walk in the gardens. He always treated her with respect, with kindness, never once making her feel like she didn't belong. One evening, as they sat on a bench beneath the starry sky in the royal garden, Victor looked at her, his expression serious yet soft. Lina he began, his voice low. There is something I need to tell you, something I haven't shared with anyone else. Lina turned to him, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the weight of his words before he even spoke them. What is it? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Victor took a deep breath, his eyes not leaving hers. I've been dealing with a curse, he said quietly. It's something that has haunted me for years. A curse that is tied to my bloodline, to the throne. And it's something that no one can break. Lina's breath caught in her throat. She had heard rumors about the Alpha King's strange behavior, about his coldness, his distance, but she had never imagined that it was something as serious as a curse. What kind of curse? She asked, her curiosity getting the better of her. Victor hesitated for a moment, as if debating whether or not to continue. Then with a sigh he spoke again. It's a curse that makes me lose control of myself. A curse that makes me a danger to everyone around me, especially to those I care about. The only way I can keep it in check is by staying distant, by keeping everyone at arm's length. But with you, Lina, I don't want to keep my distance anymore. His words hit Lina like a bolt of lightning. She had always known that Victor was different, that there was something more to him than the world saw. But to hear him admit it so openly, to hear him share his burden with her, made her heart ache with sympathy. Victor she said softly, reaching out and taking his hand. You don't have to go through this alone. I'm here for you. I may not have the power to break the curse, but I can be here for you, to help you however I can. Victor looked at her, his blue eyes filled with emotion, and for the first time she saw a flicker of vulnerability in them. I've spent so long pushing people away, he admitted. But with you I feel like I can let my guard down. I don't know what this means, Lina, but I do know that I want you by my side. I want you to be a part of my life, no matter the consequences. Lina felt her heart swell with emotion. This was it. This was the moment when everything changed. She had never expected to be in this position, never expected to be someone's anchor, someone's strength. But here she was standing beside the most powerful man in the kingdom, offering him her support, her heart. I'll stay with you, Victor, she said, her voice steady and filled with conviction. Whatever happens, I'll be by your side. Victor smiled at her, a smile that was full of warmth and gratitude. And in that moment, Lina knew that everything was about to change. The curse, the power, the responsibility, they were all a part of him, but they didn't define him. What defined him was the man sitting beside her, the man who had seen her, truly seen her, and had chosen her to walk with him through the darkness. As they sat there together, the world around them seemed to fade away. In that moment it was just the two of them, the stars above them, and the promise of a future that neither of them could have imagined alone. But together they might just have a chance. The days that followed Victor's confession were filled with a new unfamiliar sense of purpose for Lina. She found herself more determined than ever to stand by his side, to support him through the curse that had plagued him for so long. The weight of the world seemed to press on him, but Lina was there to lighten the burden, to offer him the one thing he hadn't been able to trust in anyone else: unconditional support. Their moments together grew more frequent, and with each encounter, Lina felt her bond with Victor deepen. He was still the Alpha King, the most powerful wolf in the kingdom, but when he was with her he wasn't just the ruler. He was a man vulnerable, haunted, and in need of someone who truly saw him. They would spend hours talking in the royal gardens, walking through the maze of roses and ancient oaks, or sitting together by the fire in his chambers, simply sharing quiet moments. It was during one of these walks that Victor spoke again, his voice steady but laced with something that made Lina stop in her tracks. I want you to be with me, Lina, in a way that goes beyond this curse, beyond what we have now, he said, his tone serious but gentle. I need you by my side, not as a servant, not as a mere guest, but as my equal. I want you to be my queen. The words hung in the air between them, and Lina felt her heart race. She had never imagined this moment, never thought that someone like her could ever be considered for such an important role. The idea of being by Victor's side as his queen seemed impossible, a dream she had long since abandoned. but the sincerity in his eyes, the warmth in his voice, made her wonder if maybe, just maybe, it wasn't impossible after all. Victor she began, her voice trembling slightly. I don't know if I'm worthy of such a title. I've spent my whole life believing I was nothing more than an outcast, an omega with no place in this world. Victor turned to face her fully, his hands gently cupping her face, forcing her to look into his eyes. You are worthy, Lina, he said softly. More than you'll ever know. Your kindness, your strength. That's what makes you worthy. You've stood by me when no one else has. You've seen me for who I truly am, and not for the title I hold. That is what makes you the perfect match for me. Tears welled up in Lina's eyes as she took in his words. She had never imagined that the Alpha King would see her that way, that he would see her as his equal, as someone who could stand beside him and share the weight of the crown. She had always been invisible, always felt like she was nothing. But now, in the face of Victor's love, she was beginning to believe that maybe she wasn't nothing. Maybe she was everything he had been searching for. I don't know what to say, she whispered, her heart overflowing with emotion. Say yes, Victor urged, his voice low and full of emotion. Say yes, and we will face everything together. The curse, the kingdom, everything. We will face it all side by side. Lina took a deep breath, her mind swirling with uncertainty and hope. This was a decision that would change her life forever. A decision that would bind her to Victor in a way she had never imagined. But as she looked into his eyes, she realized that this was the only path she could take. She had already given him her heart, and now she was ready to give him everything. Yes, she whispered, her voice steady now. Yes, I'll be by your side as your queen now and always. Victor's face lit up with a smile that could have melted the coldest of hearts. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as though he was afraid to let go. Thank you, Lina, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. You have no idea what this means to me. In that moment the rest of the world faded away. There was no kingdom, no curse, no doubts. Just the two of them standing together, ready to face whatever came next. And for the first time in her life, Lina felt like she truly belonged. She was no longer invisible, no longer just an omega. She was Victor's queen, his equal, and nothing could ever take that away from her. As they stood there in the quiet of the royal gardens, under the light of the moon, they knew that their journey was just beginning. The road ahead would be difficult, but together, they would face it all side by side. In the weeks that followed Lina's acceptance of Victor's proposal, life within the royal palace began to change. What once felt like a dream, the idea of being Victor Ravenswood's queen, was quickly becoming her reality. Lina had always known that a life with the Alpha King would come with challenges, but nothing could have prepared her for the weight of her new role. It was no longer just about standing beside him as his equal. Now she had to be a part of the kingdom's politics, face the expectations of his people, and navigate a world she had never truly belonged to. Despite the challenges, Victor remained her rock. Every night, he would come to her chambers, his eyes filled with admiration and love, reminding her that they were in this together. But there was something darker that lingered beneath the surface, something Victor had yet to tell her. Lina had noticed the occasional moment when he would pull away, when his gaze would darken, and the weight of the curse he had spoken of would seem to take over him. It wasn't often, but when it happened, Lina couldn't help but feel helpless. She didn't know how to help him, how to ease his pain. She could see the burden he carried, and it broke her heart to know that she couldn't simply wish it away. One evening, as they walked through the gardens, their hands intertwined, Victor stopped and turned to face her, his expression more serious than she had ever seen it. Lina he began, his voice low. There is something I haven't told you, something I need to explain before we move forward. Lina felt a lump form in her throat. She had always known that Victor had a past, that he had been through things no one else could truly understand, but hearing him speak so solemnly made her stomach twist with unease. What is it, Victor? She asked, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions churning inside her. Victor took a deep breath, his hand gently brushing against hers as if grounding himself. The curse is not just a part of me. It is something I inherited, something that has been passed down through the generations of my family. It is tied to the throne, tied to the bloodline of every Alpha King before me. It is not just something that affects my temper or my control. It affects everything. Lina stared at him, trying to comprehend what he was saying. But you've never told anyone about this, she said softly. Why now? Why are you telling me this? Victor's eyes softened as he looked at her. And for a moment, Lina could see the vulnerability he had been hiding. Because you are my queen now, Lina. You are no longer just by my side as a companion. You are a part of this kingdom, a part of my family, and you deserve to know everything. The curse is not just something that affects me. It affects everyone I love, everyone I touch. It is a weight I have borne alone for so long, but now I have you. Lina felt her heart ache as she listened to him. She knew this was difficult for him to say, but she also knew that it was important for her to understand. What does it mean for us, Victor? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Victor took her hands in his, squeezing them gently. It means that the curse could one day take control of me. That I could lose everything I've built, everything I've fought for. It means that I could become a danger to you, to everyone in this kingdom, if I cannot learn to control it. Lina's breath caught in her throat. She had always known that there was darkness within Victor, but hearing him speak so plainly about it made her fear for him. But we can fight it together, she said firmly, her eyes locking with his. We've already faced so much together, Victor. We can fight this too. I'll stand by you no matter what. Victor's eyes softened, and for a brief moment, she could see the hope in them that he had been holding on to. I want to believe that, he said quietly. But the curse is a force that I don't know if we can defeat. I don't want you to get hurt. I don't want you to become a casualty of something I can't control. Lina stepped forward, closing the distance between them, her heart resolute. Victor, I don't care about the curse. I care about you. And I will not let you face this alone. You are not the curse. You are the man I love, the man I want to rule beside. Victor looked at her for a long moment, his expression torn, before he finally pulled her into his arms. Thank you, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you for seeing me. For loving me despite everything. As they stood there in the garden surrounded by the soft glow of the moon, Lina realized that this was what love was. It wasn't about perfection or the absence of challenges. It was about standing together, facing the darkness, and refusing to let it tear them apart. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. As long as they were together, they could face anything. And no curse, no matter how powerful, could ever change that. The days passed quickly, and with each one Victor and Lina grew closer. Their bond, which had begun with quiet moments of conversation and shared vulnerability, was now something far deeper. Victor no longer kept his distance, no longer allowed the curse to control his every action. With Lina by his side, he was starting to feel as though he could finally breathe, as though he could fight the darkness that had defined his existence for so long. Yet, despite the growing peace between them, there was always the lingering threat of the curse, a constant reminder that their happiness was fragile. Lina could see it in Victor's eyes every time they spoke of the future. The weight of his lineage, the fear of losing control, the worry that he might never be free of the curse that had haunted his family for generations. And though she stood by him with unwavering love and support, there were times when she could see the battle he was fighting inside himself, a battle that she could not fight for him, no matter how much she wished she could. It was one of those moments that came to a head when Victor invited Lina to accompany him to the Northern Territories. The journey was not just a diplomatic one. It was also a dangerous mission to seek answers about the curse from the very place where it had first been born. The journey itself was long and arduous, filled with treacherous landscapes and harsh conditions. Lina had never traveled so far from the comfort of the palace, but she was determined to face whatever came next alongside Victor, even if it meant facing the unknown. As they reached the heart of the Northern Territories, the air grew colder, and the land seemed to change, becoming more desolate, as if the curse itself had left its mark on the very earth beneath their feet. Victor led her to an ancient stone temple hidden deep within the mountains, a place he had never shared with anyone else. This is where it all began, he said quietly as they entered the cold, dark space. The temple was unlike anything Lina had ever seen. Its walls were covered in runes, markings that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light, and the air inside was thick with an ancient power that both frightened and fascinated her. As they stepped deeper into the temple, Victor's face grew darker, his steps slower, as though the place itself held memories that were too painful to revisit. "What happened here, Victor?" Lina asked gently, her hand finding his, grounding him as they moved further into the temple. He looked at her, his eyes filled with a mix of sorrow and determination. "This is the site of the ritual," he explained. "The ritual that bound the curse to my bloodline, passed down from father to son, generation after generation. The curse that has controlled every Alpha King in my family. It was created here in this very place." Lina felt a chill run down her spine as the weight of his words settled over her. She knew the curse was powerful, but hearing him speak of it in such a personal way, knowing how it had shaped his life, made it all the more real. "But you're not like your ancestors, Victor," she said softly, her eyes never leaving his. "You're different. You can break free." He smiled at her, a sad, almost weary smile, but the love in his eyes was clear. "I hope so, Lina," he said quietly. "But there are forces at work here that I don't understand. Forces that have controlled this kingdom, and my family for centuries." As they reached the center of the temple, Victor knelt before a large altar, his hand resting on the stone, his face etched with pain. Lina stood beside him, her heart aching for him as she watched him confront the past that had haunted him for so long. "What do we do now?" Lina asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. Victor closed his eyes, his fingers tracing the runes etched into the altar. "We seek the truth," he replied, his voice resolute. "The answers are here, Lina. And once we have them, we will decide what to do next." As he spoke, the air around them began to shift, a subtle energy filling the room, and the runes on the altar glowed brighter, as though reacting to Victor's presence. Lina watched in awe and fear as the stone began to hum, a deep resonating sound that seemed to come from the earth itself. "This is it," Victor murmured. "The beginning of the end." The glow from the runes grew more intense, and for a moment, Lina felt as though she was standing on the edge of something vast and unknown. The curse, the darkness, the power that had consumed Victor's family for so long. It was all here in this moment waiting for them to take the next step. Victor stood up, his face set with determination. "Whatever happens next, Lina, know that I will never stop fighting. For you, for us, for the future we deserve." Lina nodded, her heart full of love and hope. This journey, this battle was not just about the curse. It was about them, their love, their future, and the strength they had found in each other. Together they could face anything. As the days passed since their journey to the Northern Territories, Lina and Victor felt a sense of calm settle between them, though it was tempered by the knowledge that their fight was far from over. They had found what they were looking for in the ancient temple. A clue. A piece of the puzzle that might allow Victor to break the curse that had haunted his bloodline for centuries. But the answer was not simple, nor was it easy to come by. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with dangers and unknown forces that even Victor could not predict. Still they had each other, and that in itself was enough to give them hope. They returned to the capital, and Lina felt a strange sense of peace as she stepped back into the royal palace. The weight of the world still pressed on Victor's shoulders, but he was no longer carrying it alone. They were in this together, and that made all the difference. Lina spent her days helping him with the kingdom's matters, offering her counsel whenever he needed it, and standing by his side as his queen. The kingdom, though wary of the unknown, seemed to accept her more each day, and with every passing moment, Lina felt more and more like she truly belonged. Yet, there was still the lingering question of the curse. The night after their return, as they sat together in the royal gardens, Victor's hand found hers, and his eyes locked with hers in the moonlight. "There is still so much we don't understand," he said quietly, his voice heavy with the burden of what they had learned. "The curse is not something I can simply defeat. It's tied to my very existence, to the throne itself." Lina squeezed his hand, her heart full of understanding. She had known this, of course. She had known that they couldn't just wave a magic wand and undo centuries of dark power. But what Victor hadn't realized was that it wasn't the curse that defined him. It was his heart, his choices, his strength, and his ability to love. "I know," she said softly. "But you're not alone in this, Victor. Whatever happens next, we will face it together. We have already overcome so much." Victor's gaze softened, and for the first time in weeks, A genuine smile spread across his face. You give me strength, Lina. You make me believe that there is still hope. The next day, they summoned the most powerful mages and scholars in the kingdom to help them understand the true nature of the curse. The ancient texts they uncovered revealed the full extent of the curse's power. It was not something that could be undone by magic alone. It would take more than just knowledge. It would take sacrifice, determination, and an unbreakable bond between Victor and the one he loved. As the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, Victor came to a realization. The curse had been created to protect the kingdom, to ensure that only the strongest would rule. But it also kept him trapped in a cycle of darkness, one that had ruled his life for far too long. I have to face this, Lina, he said one evening as they sat in the quiet of their chambers. I have to face the curse head-on and break it for good. I can't continue like this. Lina nodded, her heart aching for him. Whatever you have to do, I will be right here with you, she said, her voice filled with unwavering support. We will find a way together. The final step in breaking the curse was something neither of them had expected. It required Victor to confront the darkness within himself, to face the part of him that had always been controlled by the curse. But to do so, he had to let go of the fear that had held him captive for so long. The fear of losing control, the fear of hurting those he loved. Lina was there every step of the way, offering her love, her strength, and her unwavering belief in him. The night Victor faced the curse, he did so with Lina by his side. Together they stood in the heart of the palace, surrounded by the light of the full moon. The air was thick with anticipation as Victor took a deep breath. His eyes locked onto hers. I love you, Lina, he whispered, his voice filled with emotion. And I will fight for us. For our future. Lina smiled, her heart full of love and pride. I believe in you, Victor. And I will always stand by your side. With those words, Victor closed his eyes and released the darkness within him, facing the curse with everything he had. It was not easy. The darkness fought back, but Victor's love for Lina was stronger. With her support, with her strength, he was able to break free. The curse that had bound him for so long was finally lifted. And for the first time in his life, Victor felt truly free. As he opened his eyes, he saw Lina standing before him, her face filled with love and pride. The journey they had taken together had not been easy, but it had led them to this moment. A moment where they were no longer bound by the past, but free to build their future together. Victor took Lina's hand and together, they walked into the future, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The curse was broken, but their love was eternal, and nothing could ever stand in their way again.